Well, I was raised the oldest of three kids. My dad was a pastor growing up. Almost all my life, he pastored churches. But the thing is I always felt like the odd man out. I knew I belonged in the family because I got my granddaddy's earlobes. And for some reason, when my dad passed away 6 years ago, his hand showed up on the end of my arms. So I know I belonged in the family, and I knew I was loved, but I didn't feel like I fit because I was so different. I was so different than my father. My dad was very compassionate. Me, not so much. I wasn't very compassionate. My dad was very patient. Well, not with me really, because I tried him a lot, but he was patient with everybody else, and he would counsel people, and they would come and they'd have the same problem over and over again, and I'd say, Dad, just tell them, don't come back till you do what I told you to do last time. Well, they need to, and I'm thinking, no, that's what we got, that's what you need to do. I'm telling him what to do. And then my dad was always the first one. If somebody needed something, it was his first instinct to just jump in and help. And my instinct was always to, okay, let's formulate a plan. Let's see how we can avoid this happening. Let's see if we put this in place and we do this and we strategize this. But the biggest thing was I was a daydreamer. It was pretty pitiful that we had windows in our classrooms in school, because I would be sitting in class and all of a sudden I would come to myself thinking, I have left the room and I probably need to know what she just said. And it wasn't that I was daydreaming about frivolous things. I was solving problems. Problems like if you're driving down the road and you need to cut down telephone poles while you're driving down the road. So I developed in my mind this big, huge saw that was spring-loaded. So as you go, you hit it and it flexes as it cuts. And then I'm 11 years old and I'm strategizing how to cut down telephone poles on it. I'm solving problems. So I wasn't frivolously daydreaming, but my dad was just a very realistic person. Never really didn't have a lot of, I don't want to say he didn't have vision, but he wasn't a visionary. And so I felt like I did not belong in the family. And so this went on until 1993, and the church we were attending, the pastor did a study on the motivational gifts. And I don't know how many of you have really done an in-depth study in them. Romans chapter 12 talks about 7 gifts that we are given, that God has given us, and they're given to us at inception, and they're placed inside of each and every one of us. And we all have all 7, but some of them are our dominant gifts and some of them are weaker gifts. And so I took the assessments and I did all this stuff, and come to find out my gifts are exactly opposite of my dad's. So Romans chapter 12, I'm going to read it right quick. I'm going to read the King James Version and then the New Living Translations. Romans chapter 12, verse 6 through 8 says, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to you, whether prophecy, let us prophesy, according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministry, or he that teacheth, on teaching, or he that exhorteth, on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth, with diligence. He that showeth mercy, with cheerfulness. Now I'm going to read that out of the New Living Translation, so it'll give it a little more clarity. In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. God has hardwired into each one of us all 7 of those gifts. And I'm going to cover all 7 of them really quickly, do some little brief synopsis of what they mean. I've written a whole book on this study that I just came out with a couple of weeks ago, my very first book, and I'm excited about that. They're available back there for $10 if you want one. Kind of goes along with it. Also, there's a website, discoveryou-book.com, that you can download the assessment, take the assessment, 70 questions, shows you what your strengths are, what the weaknesses are, And so it helps you understand where you are, and then you can kind of go along in the book. But we're comprised of these 7 distinct gifts that motivate us. So one of the things I've come to understand is what energizes us motivates us. So what gives us energy, when we're doing something, if it gives us energy, we're motivated to do that. If it just saps the energy out of us, we're not motivated to do that. Shopping is one of those things that just sucks the energy right out of me. So I'm not very motivated to go do that. Miss Sharon needs to go shopping periodically, and she wants me to go along. And the malls, they put something in the air conditioning that you just automatically get tired. And joy just leaves the building. And so I'm not motivated to do that, but I'm energized when it's something that I love, and I love to do well. And so we're going to talk about these. And so when I wrote the book, I actually wrote the book to fit into the corporate world as well as the church world, because I wanted a broader audience. I wanted people in the corporate world to understand how they were made as well as people in the church, because I believe from experience, from my own experience, having gone through this and understood finally who I am and how I'm made, I understand now why God gave these to us. And once I understand who I was and what my makeup is, I can now be myself fully. And so my first 30 years of my life, I spent not knowing who I was. I'd come home and my mom would say, well, just be yourself. And I would say, who is that? Because nobody in my circle, nobody in my family, in my inner circle, I could find anybody I could relate to as far as how I thought and how I perceived things and how I approached things. And so it was just one of those hard things. But when I finally had this discovery, we went through this teaching, I took the assessment, learned my gift set, and I'll tell you what that is later. It really opened my eyes. It took me another 10 years. I was 30 in 1993 when I first took this. It took me another 10 years to really learn more about myself and be comfortable with who I am, comfortable in my own skin, to where I said, I am who I am. I will improve where I can improve, but this is who I am. And if people don't like me, they are missing out, because I'm pretty likable. I'm a pretty good guy. So anyway, let's look at each one of the gifts. And I've put different names. Of course, the New Living Translation puts some of these same names. So the first one talks about prophecy. And so it's called perceiving. I've used the word perceiving. And perceivers have a keen sense of right and wrong. It's because of this sense of right and wrong that perceivers hold very high standards. I'm a rule follower. I'm like, you've got to, here's the rules. You're not obeying the rules. When people are doing things and it's like, no, there's a rule, and you stay with the rule, because that's what the rule is for. And other people say, oh, there's a rule? I didn't know there were rules. Other people have that whole mindset. My whole thinking is that way. They tend to be perfectionists because of their high standards, and often become their own worst critics. In some cases, perceivers don't realize their gift, and they can become very critical. See, there's where the rub was. My dad was always loving and kind and all this kind of stuff, and I had this tendency to be critical. I also have a gift of discernment, and so I could discern things in people, and then I'd be critical about it. And then I was raised in the ministry. And those of you in the ministry understand being critical is kind of a thing that you have to guard against being in the ministry, because of people are in the ministry. And so you have to watch that. So they emerge with pessimistic attitudes, and so you have to guard the person with the gift of perceiving and prophecy. But they are visionaries. They see things. They perceive things. They can see into the future where other people can't see what needs to happen. They can't conceive of what needs to happen. They can see it. And God gives them this gift, and they have discernment. And then we move to the second one, that is serving or ministering. Now, I have a perfect example in my life of the person that has a gift of serving, and that's my mother. I should have put her picture on the chapter of serving because my mother is the epitome of a servant, because her whole life was spent serving my dad and his ministry. And she did it with a glad heart because that's who she was. My mom is the kind, she's like every Southern mother. When you come in the house, you're hungry, do you need anything? And she could make a meal out of nothing. And she's the kind of person that can, she just sees things that need to be done. The person with the serving gift, they have the ability to identify the unmet needs involved in a task and to make use of available resources to meet those needs and help accomplish the desired goals. Now, servers are particularly skilled to quickly identify tasks that need to be done. They are those people, they just see things. Where us, we can walk around, we're oblivious of things, we can walk around, but they will see the piece of paper on the floor. They will see that the trash is flowing over. They will see things. They'll just notice these things where a lot of people will not even notice. It's not because they're bad people. They just don't notice those. But a servant, they'll see those things in a heartbeat and they'll jump and do it. And so that's what the gift of serving. They're very cognizant of their surroundings, and perhaps this comes from their need to provide for others. They're nurturing people. Charles Bledsoe's daughter lives, we used to live in Buda, now we live here in San Marcos, but she lived in the same town we are, and she's kind of like my daughter too. I kind of adopted her as my daughter, but she is a servant. I mean, she's a servant. In fact, she gets depressed if she can't serve somebody. So, she picks in. So when we had the church, we were being portable at the time, and we were set up in a building. And she came in, this was like her second time to be there, and we were having problems with the sound system. And the place we were renting actually provided a sound man with the sound system, and there was something wrong with the sound system, but I was leading worship and I could not fix it. She gets up in the middle of worship and goes back and says, "You need to fix that." Where most people were just worshiping, and she got up and said, "I could see it was bothering you," so she got up and fixed it. That's a servant. That's somebody that has a servant's heart. The third gift is teaching. People with the gift of teaching are consummate debaters. It's how they convince and help others to learn. It doesn't matter if they are in the office or at home. People with the gift of teaching are constantly thinking on their feet. They're always analyzing things. Teachers need to know the reason behind concepts and ideas. I don't want to just know the answer. I want to know the reason behind the answer. I want to know where you get the answer. And so teachers are that way. Teachers can appear argumentative while they're simply trying to gain further understanding. They're the ones that when they were kids, they said why all the time. So they've got to understand. But they have the ability to synthesize truths and ideas which result in a constant mental flow of information. And since their mind is always running and explore new concepts, they tend to be self-motivated and self-starters. Listen to this. People with the gift of teaching need intellectual stimulation. They get easily bored with routine tasks as they love to learn and keep their mind busy. People with the gift of teaching, they want to learn something new all the time. And once they learn something new, then they got to move on to something else. They're knowledge junkies. They love knowledge. But then they also have the ability to take this knowledge that they've learned, and it's not useless. They can take it and they can synthesize it and put it into a form where people can understand. The people with the gift of teaching can take complex ideas and things, and they can synthesize, they can put them into an easily understandable form so people can grasp the concept. Moving on, exhortation. We use the term encouraging. Exhortation. Now, this is the ability to call out the best in people through encouragement and motivation. So the definition I use in the book is the ability to give words of comfort, consolation, encouragement, and counsel in such a way that others feel helped and healed. There's a need for what is called the care of the soul, in which certain folk come alongside of others to comfort, encourage, as well as incite people to continue in their cause. The encourager, the exhortation, the people with the gift of exhortation are encouraging. They are the ones that are always letting you know you can do it. You can succeed. You've got what it takes. They're always, and they get fulfillment from encouraging people and seeing them become encouraged. Now see, teachers, they get fulfilled at just teaching. Whether you learn it or not, that's where they get their fulfillment, is teaching. But an encourager, they have to see somebody get encouraged. Or they're just going to keep on encouraging. Encouragers want somebody to understand, listen, you just stay after it. Just stay after it. You're good. You got it. You got what it takes. And so encouraging, we need those in our lives. And how many of you that pastor churches know you need somebody that can be an encourager in your life? And hopefully it's your spouse. If not, pray the Lord endow them with that gift or something, because you need encouragement in your life. The next gift is giving. That's pretty simplistic, but the definition of giving that we use is the ability to understand the material needs of others and then meet those needs generously. Now see, some with the gift tend to live simply and keep what they need while they give the rest away. This is not always, again, these are not hard and fast rules. These are things that are, because as your gift cluster works together, what are the strongest ones, then it changes some of the things in the other gifts. And so it adapts. It's what makes us individuals, because we all have these gifts, but they're in different order and different strengths. And so God uses them differently in each one of us. But the concept embodied by this gift is the giving and sharing of what one has with others in a manner that is neither in secret or in reluctance. Somebody with the gift of giving, that's the very first thought that comes to their mind. When they see a problem, what can I give? What can I give? What can I give? And I'm going to be honest with you, that was not my first thought when I would see things. That was not my first thought. My dad, though, it was, because he had the gift of giving. He had this gift that just, now, did that make me bad? Am I not a giver? I'm a giver. I love giving, but it's just not my first thought. And I'm going to be really, really transparent with you. There are things that are just not my first thought, like praying for somebody. I know I'm a minister. That should be the first thought. But my wife, the very first thing she ever thinks about when she hears, well, let's pray about that. And I'm thinking, well, I'm analyzing it. I don't have time to pray right now. I'm analyzing it. That's just what I do. And so I need her in my life. But see, there's things in our lives that are not our strengths, that God will put somebody in our life that will help us. So giving is, they tend to live simply, but not always. A lot of times they're just really blessed people, and they give because they're blessed and they know how to do it. And you always want to have people like this in your life, because they can teach you about finances. They know how to give finances and deal with it in their lives. Next to last is leading, or ruling. In the New King James it's called ruling. And we use the term leading. What makes the gift of leading unique is the ability to see the big picture. Now, the leader looks ahead for possibilities and dangers. The ability to guide people and communicate to them regarding how to develop the big picture gives the leader an assertive, take charge attitude. See, I was talking about this Sunday at the church I was preaching at, the Baptist church I got to preach at. This is my second time preaching at a Baptist church. I love it. But I was telling them, listen, I have this thing that when I go anywhere, if there is no leadership, I will take charge. Not because I'm going to take charge, it's just what I do. My mind works that way. We were at a birthday party. My wife's nephew turned 40, and we were at his birthday party, and his wife was putting the birthday party together. And so she was busy. Of course, we got there, we're preachers' kids, so we get there an hour before anybody else gets there. And so we get there, and as people was coming in, she was visiting and fellowship, and people coming in with gifts in their hands, looking around. And I thought, this can't be. They can't just wander around with gifts. They've got to know what to do. So I go, and I say, oh, here's the gift table over here, and you can put your gifts there. There's some refreshments you can have. We've got tables, and I'm just, I'm giving direction. Nobody asked me to do that. I just do it because nobody was doing it. Now, if there is leadership, I'm fine to sit back and let somebody do it. Now, I'll be saying, if we do that, we can do it better, but I'll keep my mouth shut, though. But I just don't take over. But when there's no leadership, nobody's providing direction, I will do that, because that's what leaders do. They see things, and they see, okay, people need to know how to be directed, and this needs to be happening. And you can probably figure out right now what my gifts were. So natural leaders can appear bossy to other people if you don't know them well. Poor Sharon, she's always had to say, but you know, I know his heart. And I'm thinking, you don't have to apologize for me all the time, do you? She said, no, I know his heart. You know, I know his heart. He didn't mean it that way. You know, so it's just one of those things where I get so focused on what I've got to do and what I've got to accomplish that sometimes my gracious nature kind of is weak, and I'm just focused and that sort of thing. A leader has the ability to bring order by setting up structures, systems, and methods for others to follow. The behaviors of a leader are similar to behaviors of the other motivational gifts. The difference in the motivation of the leader, which is to move everyone towards a common goal. Now, this is where a leader, I compare them to the fivefold gifts, where I compare them to the apostle, because the leader, like the perceiver, the leader will give admonition. A leader can encourage someone and warn them of upcoming situations. And then, like the teacher, a leader will provide sound counsel and instructive reasoning to convince the people of a common goal. Then, like the encourager, a leader will motivate and inspire others to achieve and succeed. And like the server and giver, a leader is very task-driven and independent. We're a lot like the apostle. The apostle is like, I always consider the apostle like the general contractor. The general contractor makes sure all the other things are happening. The way I learned the fivefold gifts in Ephesians is apostle, because it can touch all the other fingers, the prophet, because it points things out, the evangelist, because it reaches further out, the pastor, because it has a direct line to the heart, and the teacher, because it probes all the time. So that's how I learned the fivefold ministry. Whether it's all true or not, I don't know. But the apostle can actually work with all the other gifts to make something happen. It's a fathering ministry. So the gift of leading is a lot like the apostolic ministry. Again, let me mention this right quick. Now, these are gifts that are different than, say, your manifestational gifts, like the gift of prophecy. The manifestational gift is for prophets. For words of knowledge, words of wisdom, gifts of healing, those are manifestational gifts. And then you got the ministry gifts, which is the fivefold gifts. So this is a different set of gifts altogether. See, I like it because God just likes giving gifts. He just loves giving gifts. So the last one is mercy. Dun, dun, dun. People gifted with mercy are the first to listen and sympathize when someone is suffering. They feel that sympathizing with others is a valuable use of their time. And I'm thinking, really? Being sympathetic is valuable, but you can tell that's not my gift. This gift is concerned with the condition of the person who is suffering or in trouble. Often people with this gift have a strong desire to relieve the pain of others. It's the ability to show compassion and mercy that enables the person with this gift to demonstrate a large amount of patience. People with mercy have a lot of patience. They are less likely to become frustrated when people repeatedly come to them with problems, unlike those gifted in other areas. Gifted in other areas, okay? Depending on the other dominant gifts operating in one's life, the gift of mercy tends to attract hurting and emotionally needy people. I mean, know people that people are just attracted to them. Just that people are always come to them telling them their problems. They don't advertise. They don't say, "Hey, I'm a problem hearer." They don't say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to get up in church and announce everybody got a problem, you come." They just go to them. They just gravitate to them, because people with the gift of mercy, people are just drawn to them. And it's because they've got that gift. Nobody really comes and tells me their problems for some reason, because I don't have that gift. And I mean, I've got it. I'm not going to say I don't have it. It's just not dominant. It's actually my very last when I took the assessment, it's the very last. And my dad, it was number one. So that's why we were so different, because he had that gift of mercy. Now, this is something they've got to watch. People with the gift of mercy, it's easy to get taken advantage of, and it can result in burnout. So you have to set boundaries. And that's one of the things that I was actually able to help my dad with, is he wasn't, again, I respect my dad, I love my dad, but we had this thing, as I got older, I'd say, "Dad, You need to not, have as many people. You need to kind of back off, because he would start taking on their problems. People with the gift of mercy, if they don't watch it and they don't set boundaries, they will actually start taking on these problems themselves, and they'll start making them sick and they'll start worrying and stuff. And it's like, that's not what you're there for. You're there to hear them and to feel empathetic and sympathize with them and compassionate. Let them have someone they can talk to, someone they can get everything off their chest to. But then you turn it over to God. You let God take it, and you give them advice as God gives it to you, but you don't take it on yourself. But the person with the gift of mercy, sometimes, if they don't guard themselves, they will tend to do that. We had a couple, growing up, we had a couple that came to my parents for advice, came for counseling. We lived in a mobile home, and a double-wide mobile home, and we had the dining room was on this end, and there was a hallway that went straight down the middle of the house, and my bedroom was off of that hallway. So we would be sent to bed, so they would counsel, but I left my door open because I'm curious that way. And so I always heard everything they counseled them doing. Now, so at one point, this couple just kept coming to the house, and a couple of times they would go, mom and dad and this other couple, they'd go for a walk. And because we lived out in the country, and they could go walk and they could talk and have some private time. But one time I noticed they were coming back cresting the hill, coming up the driveway. And I noticed Dad and the woman were walking together, and Mom and the husband were behind them walking together. And I perceived something. I saw in her. She had developed an attraction to my dad. And Dad's, of course, oblivious. He could tell, I don't know, I'm just helping people. And I saw it because I have this discernment thing. And I saw that she had developed this attraction to my dad, and he was actually creating problems because of that. She kept telling her husband, you're not like Pastor Bush. You're not like Pastor Bush. You're not like Pastor Bush. And I'm thinking, you did not marry Pastor Bush. So they left and stuff, and I told Dad, I said, Dad, I saw something tonight that I think you need to know. He said, what's that? I said, when y'all were walking over the hill, I saw on her face that she's become attracted to you, Dad, and I don't think you're going to be doing them any good anymore, and it could create problems. And Mom said, I think he's right. And so they had to end it. They had to stop counseling them because Dad was just trying to help. He's just trying to help, and he didn't see that she was developing this attraction. That's what those with the gift of mercy have to guard against, because when you're compassionate and listening all the time, then if it's the person of the opposite sex, there could be an attraction, and you could be doing more harm than good. So that's the 7 gifts. Now, all 7 of them fall into 2 separate categories, and one of them is the doing gifts, and those are perceiving, teaching, encouraging, and leading. They are speaking gifts. The other 3 are doing gifts. They fall in the category of doing, and they're serving, giving, and mercy. And so as we understand how we are comprised, when we take the assessment, we learn more about ourselves, we see how our makeup is. Once we learn that, we see what makes us tick. And so my gifts in 1993, I took the assessment. And my number 1 gift was prophecy. I'm going to see things black and white. I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm going to do this. And number 2 was ruling. So I'm going to see things black and white, and I'm going to be in charge. And number 3 was teaching. So I went that way for years, and with that understanding the fact that this is how I'm made up. And so I know how to guard against the things that are the problems with these. But I also knew how to put language with who I was. And I could say, this is why I think like that, because I'm very, very analytical. I've got that teaching thing, there's number 3 in me. I'm very analytical. And the prophecy thing, I see things, I can discern things. People don't see, Sharon, I would say something to Sharon and say, there's just something not quite right there. Oh, you think? And, because she didn't see it, I could see things. And because I was perceptive that way. But then after pastoring the church in South Austin for nearly 3 years, I did the assessment again because I was doing the teaching. I thought, I'm going to retake the assessment and see if there's been any change. And what I've come to learn is is you're going to have all 7 gifts in you, but your strongest ones can move around a little bit depending on your environment and what you do. See, I wasn't exposed to teaching very often, so teaching, which was still my number 3, it was not as dominant as my prophecy and ruling. But after preaching for almost 3 years, I took the assessment, and teaching moved up to number 1, and prophecy and ruling. So prophecy and ruling stayed in the same order, but it moved down below teaching. And when I realized that, then I realized that's why I do this. I would go, back years ago when I first started preaching and stuff, I'd go, my brother-in-law pastors a church in Bonham, Texas, that Sharon's parents started in 1954, Pentecostal Church of God at Bonham, Northeast Texas. They started it in 54. Well, it's been, when my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law pastored it for a while. And then Sharon's second oldest sister and her husband took the church, and they're still there. And so he's my buddy. He's a year older than my dad was, but we're buddies because we're brother-in-laws. And so anytime I want to preach, I can just call him and say, Troy, can I come preach? Sure, come on. And so I would go and would preach, and it didn't matter how many people were there. And this is the case every time I speak. Didn't matter how many people were there, I would get up and I would preach, and my insides were just going 90 miles an hour, and I was just pumped, and I was excited, and I was just loving it. And we'd get in the car, we'd start driving home, and I'd look at Sharon and I'd say, that's what I'm meant to do. That's what I'm meant to do. Well, see, I was associating with preaching, which I love preaching, and I do preach. I love preaching. But once I come to understand that teaching is my dominant gift, I tried this because of the fact that my dad passed away with Alzheimer's, and the Alzheimer's Association sent out a bill wanting community educators, people to do presentations for them to do community groups about Alzheimer's. I said, let me do that. I'm going to do that. It'll help me give back to them. I've got some working knowledge because I was a caregiver for my dad, so I know some of that. So it'll help people. But I'm also see if I get that same energy when I'm speaking about something that's not biblical. Well, I mean, Alzheimer's, but I'm talking, it's not preaching, not revelatory preaching. And I'll get up in front of a community group. I don't care if it's 24 seniors that are snoozing the whole time, or if it's, people that are really interested in what I'm saying. I get that same energy when I'm teaching people, when I'm imparting information. And I'm an information junkie. I love to learn. I love to know stuff. Now, I didn't do well in school because I drifted off a lot. But when I can learn on my own, something that interests me, I can learn stuff, and I just want to know more. And it may not be something that I do at the time. I love learning stuff about everything. I mean, anything and everything. I want to learn about it. Because at some point, it's going to be beneficial to me. And the very first thing that comes to my mind after I learned a new piece of information is, who can benefit from this? That's the very first thing I think about. It's not, oh, great, now I know that. The very first thing is, who can benefit from this? Who can I tell this to? That is what gets me going, gets me excited. I mean, right now, I'm just going 900 miles an hour on the inside because I am so pumped. I know, I've never done drugs or alcohol or anything. Believe me, I tried, but I was either A, too scared, or didn't like the taste of it, one or the other. But I cannot imagine a high being any better than this when I get through doing this. And it can be to an Alzheimer's group. It can be anything. Teaching somebody is something I just love to do. And so, knowing that information, that is what I pursue now. I make life decisions based on what I am gifted to do. Now, see, I try to fulfill roles that I never was meant to do. Because I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not going to be arrogant. I'm pretty good at a lot of different things. I got from my dad, I've got the ability to learn things really quickly. I can adapt to things, I can analyze things, I can learn things. So I became pretty good. And I got to looking at a lot of the things that I did in my past, because I've done a lot of different jobs. I found out a lot of things I didn't want to do for a living. And so I got to looking, and it is amazing. Most of them, after a period of time, I would end up teaching someone that gift, that job. I mean, it's amazing. I got thinking about things that I did, and it was like, it'd be like 2 or 3 weeks after I'd been there, all of a sudden, they've got me in a role teaching somebody how to do this. that's because that's what I do. Once I learn it, I've got to tell somebody. I've got to help somebody learn it. So now my gifts in order are teaching, prophecy, ruling, serving, then edifying, then giving, and then mercy. So I've got that, because my mother has that serving gift, I've got that serving gift. Number 4, I get high on people. Now, I'm an introvert. I don't want to really interact with anybody, but I want to be around them. You know, that's how introverts are. We get energy from, I love going to a coffee shop. I'm the most productive in studying the Word when I'm at a coffee shop and everything's going on around me. And especially here in San Marcos, I go to the one over by the college, and you've got all those college kids there. You got that youth and energy and all that knowledge and all that kind of stuff. And I'm there with my earbuds in, and I'm studying. And Mylon and I have had this conversation. I can get zoned in on studying because I'm around people. I don't interact with them. I'm not that evangelist person that's out there saying, you know, talking to everybody. I'm not. My brother, he's a networker. My baby brother. If I want to network with somebody, I go with him because he's going to talk to everybody in the room. He's going to get to know everybody. So I kind of learn it vicariously through him. But I want to learn. I want to be around people as much as I can. But then I need to be by myself so I can get energized back up, because it'll suck the energy out of me. So that's the thing I've learned about myself. And one of the things that I just really I'm passionate about is people understanding this, because, like I say, it took me 40 years to get comfortable with who I was. 40 years to get to the point where I say, you know, if you don't like me, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I try not to be, belligerent about it. And I try not to be. I knew a couple of guys that are prophets, and a couple of them were older, and they took joy in the fact that they would hurt people's feelings. And I said, that's not right. You can be a prophet and not be harsh, And so they would, and I'm thinking, but that's just not right. And so, I've just learned to mellow, and I've gotten older. So, you've been through some things, you mellow a little bit. And so I've mellowed quite a bit. And Sharon says, praise the Lord, because, I used to be very intense about everything. Now I'm just intense about a few things. And I've learned to say, okay, whatever, But the best expression that I can give to what I experience when I'm doing what I'm designed to do, what I'm called to do, is, from the movie Chariots of Fire. Eric Liddell was a Jewish Christian guy that ran in the Olympics. And he says, I feel the pleasure of God when I run. And that puts kind of a word picture to me. I feel the pleasure of God when I'm teaching, when I'm sharing information with somebody, and it's not always Bible. It's not always biblical stuff. But the thing is it always kind of ends up being that way. I usually always end up bringing some kind of truth into it. And I may not quote chapter and verse, but I'll bring a truth into it. And then I can really speak into people's lives. So that being said, I learned to make decisions. So I don't have a degree. I went to college, but I didn't finish college. So I don't have a degree. And I told Sharon, I said, this is what I want. I want to speak for a living. That's what I want to do. I finally, at 55, figured out what I want to do when I grow up. But it's because I discovered who I am. And so for years, I've tried to follow the passion. I've tried to follow it, but I always gave up on it because it got hard. And so finally I decided this is what I'm going to do. So I went last February, and I actually got certified with John Maxwell, who's the #1 leadership person in the world. And he is actually a minister. He pastored churches before he started this organization. Well, actually, when he started, he was still pastoring. He's actually on staff at a church in Orlando where he lives now, and he teaches like every 6 weeks or so. He's on the teaching staff. But because he's a pastor and he includes his faith in it, and he's so recognized, I felt like it was something that would give me some credos and some credence to people to understand that say, okay, he's got something that we can hear. And so I followed that. I did that. And so I'm doing everything I can. I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing videos. I'm writing books. I'm doing everything I can to do what I'm called to do. And God says in the scripture, he says, a gift will make a way for men. Will put you before mean men or kings, Your gift will make room for you. And so I believe God is going to make room for me. Now, how that fits into my current place, I don't know. But as Sister Ming was talking about this morning, really pumped me up. I don't know, but boy, it's going to be good because He only does exceeding abundantly above all I can think or ask. And y'all, I can think pretty big. I think big when I think stuff. And so I'm just excited about it. And that's what I'm trying to help people understand is, listen, find out how God made you, follow that, because when you do, you will never work your whole life. It's going to be, you may have to be labor, but it will not be work to you because it's going to be fun. There are times, the other night we were around here and they've allowed me to use the women's ministry office to kind of set up a little studio because Sister Eileen don't ever use it, so I've got a little studio set up there, and so I just got bored the other night, so I ran over there to the office and recorded a podcast because I had something I wanted to say, and so I just really did that. And I think, okay, if anybody hears it, that'd be great. But if they don't, I'm still telling them, see, because the teacher, they get their fulfillment from teaching, whereas the encourager, they get their fulfillment from people being encouraged. So I get my fulfillment from actually doing the teaching. And so that's what I love to do. I'm just using myself as an example because I want you to understand that you can find what you do. And because of the dominant 2 or 3 gifts in your life will actually dictate how you think, how you do, how they work out. Because teachers, there's a lot of things about teachers that don't apply to me because I've still got that prophecy and that ruling thing up there that work in me. I've got that visionary, that perceiver in there, and I've got the whole take charge kind of thing. The person that's a leader tries to formulate, because I'm always formulating plans. I want to be very transparent with you. When we reopened the church in South Austin, I had every what am I trying to say? I had online giving set up. I had church management database set up. I had all these procedures. I had all of these things set up, and we didn't have nobody at the church. But I was going to have everything in order. I was going to have everything. Well, I had to kind of cut some of those back down because they had a monthly charge, so I had to finally stop some of those things. But I had all the structure in place. I had everything in order. I had it all done. That's because that's who I am. That's what I do. I'm a structure person. And so once you understand that about yourself, then you make decisions based on that. And so I was applying for a job, looking at a job with the Alzheimer's Association, and everything of the job really fit with me, except the fact that I had to go out every day and recruit volunteers and sponsors. Every day I had to go out and recruit volunteers and sponsors, and I said, I don't do well at that. Every other thing in the job fit me well, but I said, I don't do well at that. And in times past, I would have said, but 2/3 of it works for me. But I wouldn't have done well at that job at all because I would have been so, every morning I'd get up and just have this dread in me because I got to go talk to people. I can talk to y'all sitting there and be up here. I can talk to y'all all day like that, but I have to go meet people and say, hey, how you doing? My name's James, and I'm with the Alzheimer's Association. I did it with insurance. I was in insurance, and I did it. But I was good at it, but I didn't love it. I didn't like it. So anyway, once you learn that, you can make life decisions. One of the things that I've understood about this society is identity is one of the main issues in our society today. Well, it's been for generations, but identity is a lot of the issue today. And, a lot of people say, their identity. Well, see, the enemy fought Jesus about his identity. The very first thing he ever said to Jesus was, if you are the Son of God, because the last thing Jesus heard from God was, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Then 40 days later, after he was hungry, the devil says, if you really are the Son of God. He was challenging his identity. And so if the enemy knows he can get us confused about our identity, we've got people now in the world that are confused about their gender. I can tell you how to tell what gender you are, but we can't say it in church. But, I'm just saying, identity, the enemy's trying to keep people confused about who they are. Because if you're confused about who you are, you cannot be effective as the person you were created to be.
Amen.
And God created us as an individual with the gift cluster that we have, with the gifts in our lives that we have, for a specific reason and for a specific person. I always tell people when I'm preaching and when I'm teaching, I said, you look at your finger right there and look at your fingerprint and realize nobody in recorded history has ever had that same fingerprint. And nobody in the future will ever have that same fingerprint. That is God's prophecy to you, telling you, you are the most unique person that ever walked this face of the earth, because I put you here for one specific reason, and that's what I've gifted you to do. So when we're trying to do what other people are doing, when we're trying to fit in, as I was when I grew up, I tried to fit in. I grew up in a small rural high school where ag was the big thing, and I was in FFA. We couldn't afford for me to have the big show animals, so I always had pigs. So that's what we could afford. But, I tried to be like them because all the other boys, their dads had farms and stuff, and they farmed all this other stuff, and they could afford a bunch of stuff, and we couldn't. My dad was a preacher, so we couldn't afford the stuff. So I had this inferiority thing, so I tried to fit like them. And there was a point in my life where I would have this two-faced thing. When I'd go to church, I was church boy, because I knew how to strike the pose, I knew the lingo to use, I knew all the language. But then when I'd go to school, I had their language. I had a foul mouth. All kinds of stuff, because I wanted to fit in, but I couldn't find who I was. So anyway, the most powerful weapon you can have in your personal arsenal is to know who you are and what your purpose is. Every time I preach and talk about it, I always end up on destiny and purpose. That God designs you for a specific reason, designs you for a purpose, and once you find what that is, you'll never be happy until you find what that is. Amen. So finding identity then helps us find our place in society. Now this is what I think is great for pastors to understand. If you can have where the church that you pastor, if you can have people understanding who they are, and you know what their gifts are. See, that's the thing about it, not just knowing our gifts, but if you know what those around you, their gifts are, you're going to be able to relate to them in a better way. Because you're not, for a long time I kept getting frustrated with Sharon because she didn't think like I thought. And I'm thinking, this is just simple. This is just, I'm analyzing the whole time. I'm thinking, how can you not think ahead? Because I'm driving on the highway and I'm looking 2 miles ahead and I'm analyzing the cars up there and I'm looking, okay, so if I adjust my speed and I do this, and Sharon's just, okay, I got a car in front of me. And that's just how she is. And I'm analyzing the whole time. She said, that would wear me out. And it just energizes me because I'm organizing and I'm planning and I'm all this kind of stuff, but I'm just driving. See, once we understand what people's gifts are, then we can understand them better. And I feel like that we can place people in the body of Christ and place them in ministries and in gifts and in things they do that give them fulfillment. And they might not have discovered it yet because they've never been exposed to it. So my objective in doing this teaching is to help churches, first of all, help them find, the people in the churches find their gifts and find their strengths, and let them find their place, and then they'll be more effective. Because when you have people that are energized to do what you've placed them to do, you know that it's going to get done. That's right. When you have somebody that's a servant, and you put them over an event, it's on. You don't have to worry about it again, because they're going to take care of it. They're going to make sure every detail is taken care of. The people with the serving gift, they make good party planners. They make great event planners. So you want something to go off right, find somebody with the gift of serving. And they're going to make sure it happens. See, these kind of things, once we understand this about ourselves, about those around us, then it's going to help us relate better to them, and it's also going to make us function better as a body of Christ. And then also, I wrote the book so it would actually fit the corporate world as well, because I wanted to share this information with the corporate, because I feel like it's the same way, because I came from the corporate world. I grew up in church, but I was successful in the corporate world, and I have a heart for the corporate world. But there are principles that you can teach that are straight from the Bible, principles that you can teach that can help an organization be successful. And if you can have successful organizations around you, as a minister, if you can have successful organizations around you, then you're going to have people that are going to have a heart for what you're called to do and what God's gifted you to do in your community. And so it's not just even if they didn't, that sounded self-serving. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to sound that way, but I'm just saying, even if they didn't, but it just helps a lot when you have people in your community that can work better. So, the synopsis is we've got 7 different gifts, and they're all in different order, and they're all in different strengths in our lives. The top 2 or 3 are what really dominate how you think and what you do. It doesn't mean that we don't operate in those other gifts. We have to learn to develop them. The mercy thing in me, I have to actually work on that. Actually develop that, because I'm supposed to be merciful. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. I want mercy, so I better learn how to be merciful. It's just not natural to me, so I just have to learn to do it. Giving is the same way. I love giving. I don't have that gift of giving. That's not the very first thing I do. When I see a situation, my thing is can we put some structure? Can we put in some organization? Can we plan some things? Can we do this? And how can we board this? And how can we set this up? It's just an organizational thing. So once you understand that, once we see how we are, then I believe that it will help us to live life more fully, and we can have that abundant life that Jesus talked about. He said, John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I came to give you life, and that more abundantly. And I think that abundant life is also finding fulfillment in what you do. And as we can do that, if we can find that fulfillment in ourselves, find that fulfillment in what God's given us to do, I believe that we're going to accomplish more for the kingdom of God. So last little plug, if you want the book, it's back there at the table. They're $10. Again, it's just basically the textbooks that goes along with the teaching, but it's a standalone book. You can get information and inspiration from there. But I've developed a website for the book. It's called DiscoverU-Book, DiscoverU-Book.com. And it has a link to buy the book on Amazon if you can't buy it today. There's a link that you can download the assessment and a PDF, and you can take the assessment. There's videos. I've got a YouTube channel that I put all these teachings on, and there's a link to it. There's a podcast that I developed that's got all this information plus other things. So a lot of resources there. So if you can't get the book today or whatever, and you may have a hard time finding it in Amazon, go to DiscoverU-Book.com. The Discover You, which is the name of the book, DiscoverU-Book.com, and that has all the resources available.